I want to talk today about some fantastic genre blends that can be found in indie and self-pub books. Hello everyone, welcome and welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is all about fantastic genre blends you can find in indie and self-pub today. You can go ahead and buy them today. I asked this question over on X a few months ago, and there were 10 fantastic answers that came my way, only one of which I've actually read, but I also have a list of my own to contribute to the conversation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the 10 that came over from X, and then run through some of the genre blends that I think are fantastic in the indie and self-pub scene. Before we jump into that, make sure you check the description box down below for links to my social media and Discord, should you want to come along for the ride. Now, we're going to kick off with the 10, like I said, that have come from other people, starting with the first one here, which is Your Blood and Bones by Patricia J. Anderson. Cover looks like this. This one's definitely been on my radar. So this one comes to us with a recommendation for people who like fantasy, fairy tale, and horror. It says it blends them really well, and it comes very highly recommended. I'm definitely looking forward to picking this one up. I also believe this is either a novella or a short novel, so nice and quick to get that genre blend in. The second one we have here is The Woodcutters by Josh Hansen, and this is a blend of horror subgenres. So not only are we able to blend genres together, we can also blend the subgenres to make for a really interesting book. This one says it blends cosmic horror, psychological horror, folklore horror, and also a historical setting. So that is what that one looks like there, The Woodcutters by Josh Hansen. It definitely has my interest peaked. Anytime someone says psychological horror and cosmic horror together, I am all in. So I'm looking forward to picking that one up, hopefully sometime in this lifetime. Number 3, we have a series recommendation, and this one is the Mountain Fell series by Allegra Pescatore. Now, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I apologize if I did not. And this one does have romance elements that couple well with epic sci-fantasy elements. So science fantasy fiction is something that we do see a lot in both science fiction and fantasy. Those genres tend to blend, well, not tend to, but they can blend together quite well. And having those romance elements in here does intrigue me, particularly because of the author that recommended this series. So normally I don't gravitate towards romance, but if it's epic in scope for sci and fantasy, maybe I'm going to give that one a go. And the series starter looks like this. Then we have Elements of Time by Sam Paisley. I've not read this one. It has been on my radar. I'm pretty sure I've got it on my Kindle. And this is epic fantasy and portal fantasy blended together with a coming-of-age fantasy story. Again, we've got some sub-genres of the fantasy genre as a whole coming together to work quite well. Recommended by this author. The next one is quite high on my radar, and I would say this is going to be happening early 2025 for me. That is Mushroom Blues by Adrian Gibson, and this is a noir fungal punk is how it's been self-described, that blends itself with sci-fantasy. You get this very urban-looking setting in the cover here. I love noir and fantasy together. I think it's such a unique genre blend to indie in this particular genre of fantasy. How many times have I said genre in this video already? And I can't wait to dive in. And like mushroom magic, something with mushrooms, like world building, it's all built around mushrooms, is quite fascinating to me. So I'm looking forward to getting to this one. We also had The Crew by Sadia Samir. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Again, apologies if I didn't, which has been recommended for this. Another one that I have on my Kindle that I haven't read yet. Cover looks like this. It looks like a ragtag. Bunch of people going to do something a little bit crazy, and this is a comedy sci-fantasy, so not often a blend that you see in even the indie scene, or not that I've come across a lot of myself, is comedy blended with sci-fantasy. Some fantasy and some sci-fi will have elements of comedy, but this is the first time I've seen it like together as a descriptor for a particular book. Next up, we have A Troll Walks into a Bar. This is by Douglas Lumsden, and this is noir fantasy, which has my interest. Definitely doing one of these. So I definitely want to pick this one up. I've heard a lot of good things about Douglas's writing, and the blends that I see the author put out have me super intrigued. So I'm not sure when I'm going to get to this one, but it's definitely something that I do want to check out. Again, bit of a sucker for noir. I love studying it in film. I like reading it in books. So at some point, I will pick this one up. The next one we have recommended to us is Bloodlines. This is by Peter Hartog, and this is a sci-fi urban fantasy, which is a cool blend. I have really enjoyed this genre blend before, and I'm looking forward to picking this one up. I've had this and book 2 on my Kindle for an embarrassingly long time. So I know very little about this book. It has a cool cover, and now that I've learned that it's a sci-fi urban fantasy blend, I'm very excited to pick it up. Number 9 we have recommended to us is Callus Crow. This is by D.B. Rook, and it looks like this. This is a Western fantasy. Now, I have seen more Western fantasies come out as of late. We have a few in this particular genre blend that people like to read. There's also Weird West, which I'm not sure if this falls into Weird West, but there are a few that fall into Weird Western fantasy as well. I haven't read any myself. I do have a Low Country by Morgan Shank on my shelves to read at some point, but I'm certainly curious about the Western fantasy subgenre, so one to check out. Now, this next one is on my own list as well as being recommended, but this will finish off the recommendations from other people, so thank you so much for those recommendations and sharing those with us over on X. And this is Gunmetal Gods by Zamil Akhtar. So this one here is cosmic horror cross with historical fantasy, and this is following Kava and Micah the Metal. It's very military-esque, got a Middle Eastern setting. The setting is one of the coolest that I've come across. I read this, I've given it 3 stars the first time, 3.5 the second time. My rating didn't change all that much, and that's mainly to do with Micah the Metal. I didn't really care about him or his storyline, but when I initially read this, I did it on audio, and I think I missed quite a bit. And then I read it the second time physically when I was doing a buddy read to see if maybe I wanted to continue on with the series. And I liked it enough. I really like Kava and the story about the djinn and the magic that's happening there. I'm looking forward to experiencing more of that cosmic horror as well, because those elements were super cool and the magic elements were cool. The setting was really cool. I really like Kava as a character, and I've forgotten the female's name, the Magus. Anyway, I'm definitely continuing on with the series, but I know more about that one, so I can talk more about that. The next one that I want to recommend as a cool genre blend is Divinity's Twilight. This is from Christopher Russell. The first book is called Rebirth. Now, when I went into this, it had a 90-page prologue, and I was sort of questioning whether this book was going to be for me. As I continued to read, the horror, sci-fantasy elements and genre blend in this book were super cool. It's probably one where I would have to reread it again and then move on to the second book. I know the author is now working on the third book, so I'm hoping to do that sometime next year. I'll see if the book 2 has a recap of book 1. And if it does, maybe I'm okay. I remember elements of it, but I really liked the blend that this had. And like, there was one scene in it. There wasn't a lot of horror elements in here, but there was one scene in the book that had the cosmic horror vibe, and it was so good. And I just loved it. The next one I want to talk about from my own list is Vevin Song. This is by Jonathan Neves Mayers, sorry. And this is a dystopian sci-fi blend. Now, dystopian, I would argue, is a subgenre of sci-fi as well, but it had very dystopian elements and very sci-fi elements, maybe sci-fantasy elements as well. I believe there was magic in this. It was a long time ago when I read it, but I remember this being so unique to the time that I read it, and I had such a good time with it. We also have sort of queer normativity in there as well, which, for me is something that I quite enjoy in books, but it was the first time that I had seen this blend done before, and I really, really liked it. I now have the novella that I would like to read before the end of the year, and yeah, such a good book. I can't wait for book 2 to come out. The character growth in this was fantastic as well. A couple of others that I do have here that I want to bring up. So there's 3 more. I could go on and on. There are some obvious ones as well, which I've left off this list, but we'll ask the question at the end if there's anything that people want to recommend. But I want to bring up PJ Nwasu's Dream of Death City. This is a noir. Ringlight hates a gloss cover. This is a noir dark fantasy and a murder mystery, dark fantasy, very heavy mystery elements, very heavy noir elements, and I would say quite light on the fantasy. But again, this when I read the Dream of Death City, it was one of the first of its kind that I read, and I thought this was fantastic. The next one that I want to bring up is Chaos Risen. This is by Mark Holloway. I have praised this book a lot on this channel, but this solidified the series, or the first arc of the aspect, as a favorite series for me. It's in my top 10 because of the way the author has experimented with subgenre and prose throughout the entire series. This book in particular keeps those fantasy elements while dealing with horror elements as well. And I love the environmental body horror that we got to see in this. And I thought it was such a fun and unique blend that would not be done. Trad publishers, I don't think, would pick up this particular genre blend because of how experimental it was. And it absolutely worked. And I want more people to read this series so I can talk to them about it. The last one I have here is a very popular booktuber's book that some people don't agree with, some people do. I thought this was a great genre blend as well, and this is going to be Neon Ghosts by Daniel Green. This is a cyberpunk urban fantasy genre blend that, again, so each of the genres that this one blends together has its tropes, and the tropes have its place in this book. It guides you enough so that you're not out of place while these two come together. So, for example, urban fantasy-esque, we've got the urban fantasy setting and we have vampires. Cyberpunk-esque, we have the cool tech, very neon, very complementary to those genres. But I haven't seen a lot of cyberpunk and urban fantasy come together, and I think that's a genre blend which I love. So if you do have any more recommendations of like cyberpunk and urban fantasy as a blend, I don't tend to gravitate to one or the other and love one or the other, but together, chef kiss. Amazing. So yeah, I really liked this one as well. Like I said, there are more and more genre blends that I can think of. I think the indie and self-pub world really lends itself to creativity and inspiration from different genres. I know my own book certainly has a bit of a mishmash of sci-fi subgenres in there. If there are any that you can think of that you would recommend to me to check out, particularly on the cosmic horror side, let me know in the comments down below. Do you agree with any of these? Do you have your own recommendations? Please let me know. And if you like this content, give one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.